You know, one of my key takeaways from that last panel was the need to continue to evolve, right? As a society, as a community, as a species. So this next panel will talk about evolution as well. And we've got 4 wonderful people that can talk about their individual life experiences. I'll begin by sharing a little bit about my background as well. So I grew up in a small town up north called Brooklyn. You may have heard of it. But my story is actually my mom's story. My mom grew up in a town called Arecibo in Puerto Rico. She grew up so poor that her family gave her away to a slightly better off family when she was a little girl to work as a servant girl. That family never learned to go to school. She never went to the first month of first grade. She never learned to read or write. She lived in New York for like 50 years after moving from Puerto Rico to New York, and said maybe a dozen words of English. She knew how to say, hello, how are you? Get the heck out of my way. That was the extent of it. I was the youngest of 4 kids. My mom got married, had a child, got divorced, got remarried, had 3 other kids. I was the youngest of 4 kids. 3 older sisters, that's a whole other story. But my parents divorced when I was 2. So my mom had no other means of support than to end up on the welfare system. And that's how we grew up. You know, sometimes homeless, often hungry. But she was the strongest woman I ever knew. She was one that taught me when they tell you to sit down and shut up, that's when you need to stand your tallest and be your strongest, especially if you're standing up for somebody else. She was one that taught me that it's okay to break some dishes and ruffle some feathers if it's in the interest of helping someone else. So it's her legacy, and we lost her in 2016, that I've tried to continue throughout the rest of my life. So I joined the Air Force at 17 as a way to get out of that environment that I grew up in. And also to be able to give back to my country, because I knew instinctively that despite the circumstances that I grew up in, I was incredibly blessed and fortunate to be born in the one country in the world where the outcome may not be guaranteed, but the opportunity is. I served 7 years in the Air Force. I was in the intelligence community. I was a linguist based in Panama in the 1980s for about 5 years during the times of the Contras and the Sandinistas. Spent most of my life on a C-130. And it was a fascinating mission. But I learned to love my country even more being stationed overseas. Because I knew how important our freedoms that we take for granted are in this country that can be taken away instantly somewhere else. I remember sitting in my apartment, living downtown in Panama City, when the stuff with Noriega was taking place, and listening to the radio in Spanish. The government announcing, Panamanian public, we regret to inform you that all of your civil rights have been suspended. And that does not, will not, cannot happen here. So that's why I was incredibly fortunate to be able to serve my country. After I got out of the Air Force, I went to work for a company called Raytheon Corporation, huge government contracting company. Similar activities in the intelligence mission, but this time was a counter-narcotics effort. So I was running around the jungles of Latin America chasing drug traffickers. Have you ever seen Narcos? Yeah. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting show. And then after that, I switched to a slightly less risky industry. I went to the telecommunications industry, doing mostly international telecommunications for companies like Sprint and France Telecom. Mostly international sales, and my last gig in telecom was I was the head of sales and marketing for France Telecom for the Western Hemisphere, including all throughout the United States. And I also did a stint at AOL where I was the head of global sales for one of their divisions and head of Latin America. Fascinating stuff, had a great time, but my eldest son was 5 years old at the time. And I was on the road 75% of the time. So I had to make a choice. I can either continue the pathway to be a corporate executive in some of the world's largest multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations, or be a dad. I chose the most important job I've ever had, as being a dad. So I started my own company in 2004. My company's 21 years old this month. it's marketing and public relations to strategic communications and management consulting. We've been doing that for 21 years, serving federal government agencies and national nonprofits and small businesses and large corporations, and we've loved every minute of it. But I've always done it as a way to be able to provide for my family and also provide me the latitude and the flexibility to be able to serve my community in a number of different ways. And I've done that service to my community for a couple of reasons. Number one, to be able to feed my soul and my heart, but also to be able to provide my two sons an example of the fact that you can do good at the same time you're doing well. Because that's something that I want them to be able to bring with them as they continue their lives as well. One of the things that I was fortunate enough to be able to do was to be involved in an effort to create a new Smithsonian museum, the National Museum of American Latino. I was appointed by Congress to a commission to study the feasibility of it. I later became the chairman of a 501c3 Friends of group. And that effort, so if you don't know, you literally need an act of Congress to create a new Smithsonian museum. Well, that effort that began in 1996 had gone through 20 years of trying. And when I became chairman of this 501c3. And the bill in Congress was going nowhere, it's floundering. So many people were telling us to just give up, it's a lost cause, it's never going to happen. Well, we rallied our entire community, over 100 national organizations, to say, we're going to plant this flag and we're going to make this happen. In July of 2020, we were able to garner 295 co-sponsors for the bill in the House of Representatives. And that passed unanimously on the floor of the House of Representatives on a voice vote. Turned our attention to the Senate. We got over half of the senators co-sponsors for the bill. And when it came time for unanimous consent vote on the floor of the Senate in November of 2020, it was killed by one single U.S. senator. So did we give up? No. Went to Plan B. Plan B was to get it included in an omnibus bill that had to pass. And even that took some horse trading. And we were able to get that bill passed in December of 2020, on my birthday, December 21st. And it was signed into law 6 days later by President Trump. So we showed the country not only what could be done, but how to get it done. And we were so incredibly proud to make that happen. And again, as a way to be able to serve my community and provide my kids with an example of how one person can make a difference, a single individual can change the world if they're doing it for the right reasons. So, with that, we're going to have a conversation about classroom courage and career and that evolution that we all have gone through in our lives. So we're going to go one by one through to each of you. If you can take a moment to introduce yourselves to the audience, and then we'll have a conversation about the theme of this panel.
Efrain Apodaca. I'm going to see if this works. Solutions engineer for Cisco. So I've been at Cisco for 6 years. I'm an Air Force veteran. And I just powerful message. You and I kind of share a similar past. So you're just throwing me off. But thank you for what you do and what you've done. It's really powerful. But just want to say, started my career with the Air Force and then became a DoD contractor, working supporting the Navy. So my whole career has been based on saving, focusing on Navy, focusing on Air Force, and just kind of continuing the mission. And the mission's getting harder, as we've seen. I know from the last panel the frustrations that come through with getting things done. But thank you for having me.
Hola, me llamo Jorge, and that's the extent of my Spanish. So I'm a Cisco account manager. Before that, I was in the Navy. Some would say that I'm following my dad's footsteps. But I was an air traffic controller in the Navy for about 6 years. Lived in southern Spain, San Diego, and on a ship for my last 6 months. I get made fun of by my father also that I didn't serve too much because I was on land the whole time, right, in Spain and San Diego. It's I'm in a in California now, in Santa Monica, living with my fiance Lynn, and that's who I am.
Hi, everybody. My name is Livier Lazaro. I am an Army retiree. I did 20 years, 2 combat tours in Iraq as a combat medic. I did train and go to school to be an RN. Unfortunately, my PTSD really did a number on me. It took me 10 years to recover from, well, to begin healing, to get my kids back, to want to be out in life. So since then, I've been a veteran advocate. I am the current commander for Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 7420. I lead the nation in bringing back deported veterans, standing up for military sexual trauma, and supporting our LGBTQ plus veteran community. I have uncomfortable situations in small spaces, and that's me.
And I'm the only non-military vet here. Rocio Perez. I am the founder of Virtuous and creator of the Mindshift game and the Mindshift experience, helping people transform their lives one thought at a time, one decision every moment. And I was a teenage runaway. I was runaway at the age of 13, pregnant at 14, put myself through university as a single mother. So I had to use confidence, courage, everything. Those were my tool. That was in my toolkit. There was no other option. And I have been leading the way since I've been paving the way since I was 19 years old, and we're heading 30 years here.
Thank you so much. So let's start the conversation about education and learning and training and everything that feeds our minds and how that leads to feeding our souls. I'm a firm advocate of being a lifelong learner. I was one of those people that almost got expelled out of high school because I was so truant. But it took me 11 years to get my degree. Finally, I was on that special 11-year program. But I was able to do it going to school at night and on weekends and so forth. But that wasn't the end of my education and learning. I think you learn throughout your life in formal ways and informal ways. So, Rocio, why don't we start with you? Talk about how that concept of actually getting education, training, and other informal ways of learning has led you to where you are now.
Well, that's a great question right there. I would say the main thing was always keeping my eye on the prize. What was the prize? I had a 6th grade education. How can I get through university to accomplish my dream? So I always had my own roadmap. I didn't have many mentors along the way. And some of them I would be asking people left and right, like, how do I get into university, for instance? I had to emancipate myself at the age of 15 to get into university. Going through those School of Hard Knocks, I like to say that I have a triple PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, bottom line. I was the person who, if they offered something extracurricular when I was in university, I didn't even know what they were talking about to begin with, and I still excelled. I went ahead and took that extra class, that extra course, that extra workshop, just found many ways in addition to going to university and reading books. Books became my friends. They became the source, of, interestingly enough that I'm an author today, that they became the source of information, the activities, the things that I wasn't exposed to, connecting with people from all walks of life, different cultures, understanding that I was the one who held the roadmap no matter where I went. That I had the opportunity to learn from these experiences, and not only that, lead the way for other people who didn't have it. I didn't even know what I was doing at half the time, and I would be like, come on, let's go, Lizzie, let's go, and we're going to go to this workshop and learn about X, Y, and Z. Whatever it was those opportunities that really put me in a different place to be able to share this story, to be able to lead people when I didn't even know where I was going. I did have my roadmap. I didn't know what it looked like because we think that it's a straight line. No, it's like a zigzag, and you're going around and making loops sometimes, and shooting for the moon and landing on the floor, to be honest, and just picking myself back up. And that's where it all began, and being able to teach my own son. to do the same thing and saying, okay, son, he didn't even know that I wasn't even aware of half the things that we were doing when we got into politics or we got into volunteering or we got into different things. I taught him while I was teaching me. And he didn't even need to know. Like, I even taught him chemistry. I never even took a chemistry class in my life. And so being able to teach him that, and also being able to teach what I've learned from a mental performance. I have grandchildren. I have a 10-year-old grandson and a 2-year-old granddaughter, Emilio, Manuel, and Esme. And I teach them the same thing. I'm like, Emilio, you've got this. You can do this, right? To lead himself with courage, to take those leaps, to be in the places that are uncomfortable because we may not have everything. I know I did. I had nothing. I came from a broken family. I came from domestic violence, the school of hard knocks, la pobreza, entre todo. Like, my father would say, let's move. And it wasn't like, hey, the movers are coming or somebody's packing something. It was like, get in the car. We couldn't even grab anything. And so from that start to continuing to lead with confidence, with courage, and in some senses, getting to know myself into that. So that's what I think is most.
Classrooms. For me, the classroom has been my experiences. Everything that I've been through and a lot of my mistakes. In having all of those mistakes, you don't have a choice but to go back to the basics, right? To try to figure it out. What is going on? And I tried and failed a lot of times, and that in itself was a lesson. Just to keep trying. When I joined at 17, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that failure wasn't an option. My family depended on it. My mother was a single parent. I grew up in LA, graduated from El Monte. I was it. I was the oldest, and there I go, trying to be, I was, by the way. I was kind of cool. And picked to be a medic and then combat. And leaving my son at 4 months old, my daughter at 10, those taught me strength. They taught me patience. They taught me to trust my team and those that I left at home. All those were lessons that were hard to learn, but necessary, especially when you cannot reach out and touch them. You have to trust that you taught your kids right, to talk to you, to let you know what's going on, and that your family is going to honor all that, right? And then you still have to just kind of suck it up and go on, because you cannot out there be trying to worry about what's going on here. So, and I always have a hard time with this word, but compartmentalizing, that was something that I totally learned out there in the classroom of military, of life, of being a military woman in the Army. All those things were lessons. Things were not the same. I had to be twice as good just to be equal to somebody who wasn't even that good. Sometimes the lessons came from the people that were in charge, and I was like, that guy's in charge. I got that job. If that guy's in charge, you know what I mean? Like, it must either not take that much to have that job, or I got this down, right? So it was just like, and those were pretty much most of my lessons. But I will definitely say that when I left the Army, nobody was talking about PTSD yet. I did initial invasion, and then again, 06-07. I retired in 2010, and I crashed and burned. All I had done before was be a soldier. Retired as Sergeant First Class. I had been a wife, and I was getting divorced. And I had been a mother. And all of that was gone in like 6 months. So I learned that the mighty can fall, and hard. Because when I retired, I was an E7. Walked tall and, everything. And whoa, PTSD, combat, depression, all of that, it took a toll on me. The lessons I learned was that addiction affects everybody. Depression affects everybody. Losing custody of your kids affects everybody. I still walked around with my Michael Kors purses because that's all I had, but everything was falling apart. So I learned to be humble. I learned to count on the real people in my life, because you learn who your real friends are, right? Now that I couldn't go get my Apple TVs, I didn't have that many friends. I couldn't go out shopping, you know, things were different. You learn all those things and it hurts. But I can say, like, all the lessons that I've learned have put me where I am. Have given me the voice that I have, because I remember during those times I thought that I was screaming for help and trying to tell everybody what was wrong. And nobody could hear me. So learning to be a voice for the voiceless is one of the biggest lessons that I took from all that.
Yeah, I think similar. My classroom has been my experience also. Maybe not by intention, but maybe just because I'm really competitive. But you know, just always trying to be first in, you know, running, PT, scoring in exams, that kind of thing, right? But I made it to E5 within 16 months in the Navy. And like anyone that's been in the Navy knows, that's pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
And that's all through just paying attention, or just, you know, competing to get the best scores, right? In boot camp, you know, I made sure that, you know, I got 100% on my exams. There was 3 of them, automatically promoted to an E2. Got to my air traffic control school in Pensacola, Florida. I had one of the highest GPAs like ever in history in that program, right? So I got a letter of recommendation for E4. So I got to Rota, Spain. Gave it to my CO. He's never seen that note before, but he pushed it through and it worked. So I was automatically E4, and then I qualified for my E5 exam within 6 months. And that one also, I had a pretty good score, so I got automatically promoted to E5. So I'm not saying that it was by design or by intention, but just making sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, learning, and yeah, that really helped me shape my experience. And I think my experience in the Navy would have been a lot different if I wasn't paying attention or I didn't care about studying. So that made a big difference there. Yeah.
Should have joined the Navy.
I would have told you.
Yeah, I didn't know. But yeah, no, life, education, class. I mean, it's lifelong. It never ends. You know, when I started off early in my career, high school was easy. Mess around, just didn't take it seriously. At the end, you're looking at, hey, everyone's going to college? I'm not going. You mean I was being a rebel and against the man and not going to take SATs, and here I am, you know? And so I had to do something. And I mean, I was already a fan of the military, and to me, that was one thing I had to do, right? I knew how to tinker. I knew I had the curiosity, right? The curiosity to keep that going. So I joined, and I found, a path. And now, no distractions. Now I can focus. What do I need to do the plan, right? Personally, I wanted to get a bachelor's degree. No one's in my family's ever had a bachelor's degree, so I want to be that first one. Not just for me, but, to inspire my family. So with that, I mean, it pushed hard. It was a long road. I didn't get it right away, right? Because you have the mission you have to do. But then you have your tech schools you have to do. I don't know how you make rank so fast in the Air Force. You're not making rank. So again, yes, scoring hundreds of my tests, doing that, learning the respect, got deployed. And what's one of the biggest things that education showed for me is when I got deployed after 9/11, the best job I've ever had is just serving and being, a force out there and actually seeing the mission, not this corporate thing where, hey, let's, get bunned up here and there. No, it's actually the commander just kind of come in and, hey, we're fighting. Like, we're getting ready for a fight. I've never seen that before. So it was the most stressful time of my life, but also the most rewarding. And I would recommend it to anyone. But no, I would say that the curiosity and the competitiveness is what really gets us going. And since I chose a tech career, it can't stop, right? You're always on. So, and I tell people, like, you just can't just pick, you know, you can't know it all, right? I love AI, right? It's helping me out. But you really focus on your core, and then really just, you have to be a technologist and just kind of pick it away as you want. Like, just go sideways, but really hone your skills on one and achieve.
So I know, since we're both Air Force, I know you and I have the same shared experience of showing up at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio.
341s.
Yeah. Getting your head shaved and putting that stubble on the pillow for the first time. There's a saying that I like to say, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the willingness to move forward despite the fear. Because if you've done that first day of basic training, if you've started a new job, if you've been evicted from your apartment like I was, and I'm sure you were, Livy, you know, by the marshals coming at your house and not knowing where you're going to sleep or where the next meal's coming from, all of those things are fear-inducing, to say the least. But it's what you do with that makes the difference. So let's have a conversation about courage and what it takes to not give up, to not let the darkness take over. And even though you don't know what that next step is, still being able to move forward. Because I talk about doorways and hallways. You know, all of us go through life. You know, we walk through a hallway, we come to a set of doors, and you have to pick one of those doors. And you open that door, it leads down another hallway, and then at the end of the hallway is another set of doors, and you got to pick a door. Too many people that we know, when they're confronted with that set of doors, are frozen by fear, and they don't pick a damn door. Those of you here today have picked the door, not knowing what's on the other side. So why don't we have a conversation about that courage to step into the darkness of that
Wow.
hallway.
Yeah, that's a big milestone, I think, in my life is doing the boot camp. You know, I know there's some Marines in here, so please, you know, don't snicker too much here. But like I said, when I was going in, you know, I was, you know, parents were worried. What are you doing? What road are you going to pick? And as soon as I signed on the paper and say, hey, I want you guys to just kind of witness my signature, they let me alone. They left me alone. You know, all right, he's good. He's going to ship out. We don't have to worry about it, right? And so I had freedoms, right? I was doing my own, sleeping when I wanted, gaming when I wanted, you know, coming home at whatever time. No problem. And get on the plane and going, and this new adventure. I was excited, right? You're going and seeing a new world, get a hotel. You know, we don't have no money, so get in a hotel room and an airline. You're like, this is, you know, going with other recruits. Like, this is great. We land, you get on the bus, and then the mood changes a little bit. Everyone's serious.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking around. I'm cocky. I'm like, what are you guys worried about? What are you guys worried about? Like, dude, this is gonna be summer. It's the Air Force. It's the Air Force. So the bus stopped. The doors open, and I went from here to here. And I've never been broken down like that before. And you just completely just going from a high to a low. And really wondering, why did I get here? Like, why did I make this decision? I know why I made it. It's just, how do I have 8 weeks of this? But, you know, it's doing that courage, and you're almost like frozen, right? And you're like, what do you do? What do you do? I've never been yelled at like this before, you know. And the fear of failure, right? Like going home and saying, like, I failed at this. Like, just all these thoughts, and like paralyzing. But again, you compartmentalize one step at a time. You take your task, you do it, and really just kind of grow from that. Like, and obviously the military, you know, you're getting broken down. They're slowly building you up, but you don't realize that. You're just like, oh my God, please don't yell at me. You know, just leave me alone. And then, you know, but the milestone that I saw was really when one day the drill instructor came and says, you guys, you come here, help me out. We got to onboard the new recruits. So a new bus comes in, and then you get to yell at them, and you get to order, and you're like all over it. And the moment was not that you get to yell at them, it's just you see the comparison of where you came from to where you're at now, because you don't see it. And really just gave me more, build my confidence, build my courage, and really just kind of set me up like, okay, I'm building towards something. I see where these guys are at, and this is where I came from. But yeah, no, you got to embrace the difficult times, know how to respond, and really just take it as a challenge, because that's how you grow.
And you joined the Air Force as a way to not only get out of that sort of situation you grew up in, but also to serve your country.
Correct.
But Rocio, that you didn't have that military service?
No, I didn't have the military,
But-
although I've been working with military since I was 19.
But you are serving that military community.
I do
veteran
serve the
community.
military community, and I do mental performance coaching as well as resilience and helping them have a sense of belonging as
So
well.
let's have that conversation about courage in your space, because I know when I started my business, when my son was 5 years old, I'd always thought about starting a business, but creating something out of nothing is also kind of scary when you've got 2 kids and a mortgage and I'm going to start this thing, what if it doesn't work?
You're a single mother. You know,
Yeah.
let's have that conversation. 33 years old. I felt I was on top of the world. I had the car, the house, the kid, the education. I was highly educated coming from where I came from. And then all of a sudden, you know, I get blessed with a brain tumor as I turn 34. I have 2 businesses. And how do I move through these, navigate through life and figure things out? And I knew one thing: if I could see the future, I can walk into the future. Bottom line. As we're celebrating my 34th birthday, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got businesses, I've got decisions to make, people to connect with, things to do. How do I move forward? And I remember sitting in front of my doctor, because I demanded, the moment that I heard I had a brain tumor, I demanded to see my doctor that day. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in front of my doctor. And I'm like, doctor, what do I have to deal with? And at that moment, it becomes a business transaction. What are my options? You can do something, you can do nothing, or you can do radiation. And I'm like, okay. So as I continue to move forward, I actually found my passion and my calling. And I was living in Colorado at the time, and I came to San Diego to find a cure for myself. Because I knew one thing: if I didn't find it, I would not be able to see my son grow up. And so in 2011, I moved to San Diego, and I decided, the moment that the doctor came to me and I did radiation, and the doctor said, I'm sorry, they made a mistake in Denver. They should have never done the radiation. Now the tumor is fused. I walked out of that doctor's office in shock. Number one. And I'm crying out of anger, because I'm like, how, if they knew, and I got the specialist, 89 cases that he had worked on in his career. He was #1 specialist in the nation. And I walk out of there and I'm in tears and I'm angry and I'm like, okay, that was the first day of my life. I was like, I'm going to buy the kayak, I'm going to go, take the vacations, buy the car, do the things. And I started on the most amazing journey of my life. See, sometimes I think we think we're going in one direction, and life reroutes us. I had an invention company. I had a marketing company and an invention company when I was diagnosed. Had I moved into the invention products, I would have been competing with Steve Jobs. Okay? Because I had been inventing things and I had business plans and things were going for me. And I feel like life knocked on the door and said, Rocio, despierta. Because at the age of 25, I was in a head-on collision that nearly landed me in a wheelchair. I was 25 years old. And then now, 34 years old, 9 years later, I'm faced with this miracle. Because until then, I was just coasting through life. Yes, I felt like I was chasing money and opportunities. I wasn't living with a passion and a mission. And my mission, and something that I'm naturally competent in, is coaching people on their own journeys. I was doing that as a psychic until then, until I actually was granted this opportunity to move forward and still lead my son, still continue on in business. And I built an entire platform out of that, the Mind Shift experience. How do we shift our minds to be even more resilient? And what that led me on is discovering myself. What's inside of me? I remember being in San Diego, and it was June 26, 2011. People were calling me, Rocio, I need your energy. And I'm like, how can you? I'm the one who leads you. And you have everything that I want out of life. And it wasn't the accolades or the degrees or whatever. I was on the billboards and magazines and TV commercials, and my voice was there, and so was my face. And I'm like, I would have gladly packed all of that success into a box if you could have given me my mother's love. I don't know. What that led me to was to discover what are the things that are holding us back. What was holding me back was that. The fact that I never had that, and everything just started getting easier as I was transcending it. And what I had learned was about me. What is complex trauma? What does that look like? How does that show up in life and in business? And that's where, when I'm coaching somebody on business, and they're having a hard time figuring things out, it has to do with their mindset. It has to do with what has happened to them in their life that they haven't transcended, just like me. And now I have an opportunity, so that's where I see it.
Livy, you had to overcome so much.
I did. And I can honestly say I've done almost everything scared. Everything scared, everything nervous, or with anxiety. I'm nervous now. But you have to do it right. You can, and I was stuck for a long time in my depression. I just stayed on the corner of a couch. And there's so many decisions, but sometimes there's things that pull you out more for others than for yourself. For me, it was finding out that America deports veterans. I was on my own demise journey. I'd lost custody of my kids. One of them was in San Diego. I was living in Tijuana because that's all I could afford. I only had my retirement pay because my head was too chaotic to even do my disability. I couldn't even, I don't even know if you know what that feeling is, but as soon as you see the paper and you're overwhelmed, you're like, oh, forget it. And it was like 2-3 years. It took me 8 years to get my disability. During that time, I'm trying to cross the border to get to my appointments. But again, my anxiety, I would actually at this time like almost pass out from it. So I'm trying to get across the border to get to my doctors, and I see an office that says deported veterans. And I was like, no way. I did 20 years in the Army, and I was into everything. There's no way we deport veterans. So I was going to go in there to just educate them and let them know how they can't be scamming us. And I left there so embarrassed for our Department of Defense, so embarrassed for America. And I was still so wrapped up in my own little anxiety bubble that when they were like, oh my goodness, you can help us, you can cross the border, you can help us, I was like, I'm your hope. Oh Lord. I was like, I'm barely trying to get myself across, but I'm your hope. So that says something. My brothers and sisters needed me in a time that I didn't even know who the hell I was. So it still took me about a year, and crazy, my mom broke her femur, which made me come to Temecula and have, not have to, I did, and heal her. My mom's passed 3 years ago. And that started me coming back to the United States. And then I found myself at the VFW in Logan Heights, 7420. And I barely joined. I didn't even know what it was about. I knew we had a bar. And that was about it, right? We all know VFWs are supposed to be dark bars where veterans go tell their stories. A little bit of that. We're so much more. But that's old school. We still got a little bit. But so I don't know what I'm talking about yet. I just know deported veterans is wrong. I know they were promised citizenship. I knew that if we had a press conference, I'd probably pass out. And guess what we did? We put up a mural. We had a press conference. And I mean, we did it. We had, several of the legislators come down. I really couldn't even probably talk 10 minutes about the subject. But I resourced people that could. And they came down. Lisbeth Santana, who designed the Leave No One Behind Mural project, came down. They spoke on it. We were the first VFW to put anything up there for deported veterans. And I was scared because I was like, oh, God, they're not doing it. But if you're taking care of veterans, I don't need permission. If I'm in a veteran service organizations and our tag is no one does more for veterans, then well, let's see it. So I did that, and that led to a resolution that I passed nationally. That with our coalition, and Jeffrey knows some of our coalition, we had a bill, 4569, Veteran Service Recognition. I went to D.C. scared. I spoke to President Biden's staff scared. I testified in front of the Hispanic Congressional Caucus scared. But if nobody had done it, and if I didn't do it scared, who was going to do it? I wasn't going to wait. Our brothers and sisters were dying in exile. So sometimes it's the calling, and honestly, doing that and being there for my brothers and sisters helps heal me. Giving them a voice when they don't have one helps heal me. Them seeing that I was hope for them helped heal me. And all of that, even though I was like, I'm so scared and imposter syndrome, it was really courage. It was courage. My mom had the courage to come here as an immigrant and make me as patriotic as I was to do 20 years in the Army. So it was all courage. Do it scared. Do it nervous. Just do it.
That's awesome. So I'm sensing a through line, a theme here, in that the things that we do despite the fear, that courage bit sometimes about just going through that door, not knowing what's on the other side. Sometimes in the military you might call it mission. Sometimes you might call it cause. Sometimes it might be necessity. But there's always something that, even if you're not stepping through the door, you get pushed through the door.
Catapults you into, your destiny.
That's right. What are you hearing from some of this? What are you sort of taking away from some of this conversation? How are you internalizing it?
Yeah, know that we all have our own fears. We have to overcome and be courageous and go through that door, right? And I'm trying to think, when in my life or throughout the military or what I'm doing now, that always requires the most courage for me. And I think for me, it's around speech. Growing up, I've always had a stumble, like I pause during words, that kind of thing, right? And for some reason, I always pick career paths that involve a lot of speech, right? So when I was in high school, I was the quarterback, right? So I had to repeat plays in front of people. When I scored the ASVAB, I qualified as a controller, and I remember telling my mom, hey, I don't know if I can do this job, right? What if I'm behind the scope and I'm pausing and I can't say what I'm supposed to say? Turn left, turn right, altitude, whatever. And my mom was like, hey, just do it, right? For whatever reason, that worked out, right? But that took a lot of courage for me. And I think a lot of, going through boot camp, a lot of people have a lot of fears as far as, are they physically fit enough? They're going to miss their family. They're going to eat bad food for a while. They're going to shave their hair. Whatever it is, right? They're not going to sleep. For me, it was always around speech, right? I've always thinking, hey, I need to make it through this and see what's going to happen in air traffic control school, right? Am I going to make it through, or am I have to change jobs, right? For whatever reason, though, I find myself in a courageous place, I guess you can say, and I just move forward, right? It tends to work out. After the Navy, I knew I was going to just do my first enlistment for the 6 years, and had to figure out what I wanted to do, right? So that's when I joined Cisco, kind of left the safe environment of the Navy and my training and air traffic control, and what do I want to do, right? In the beginning, I was a little nervous about sales, because of course, you have to be in front of a crowd and speak and sound good, right? So I chose operations first. Not saying anything bad about operations, of course. But I don't know. Yeah, I was roommates with one of my buddies at the time. Heard him on a couple sales calls. Heard what he was doing, where he was traveling to, the things that he was learning, and I was like, hey, this is a really cool job, right? So I interviewed for Cisco sales, and then I got that. So I think my biggest fear is probably that. But I take on the roles that require me to speak the most. So, yeah.
Rocio, you wanted to add something, Rocio?
Did. I think one of the things that's really important to understand about fear is fear and excitement has the same physiological response in the body. We've got to be able to distinguish what that looks like for us and to say, is it excitement? Is it true fear? Is it self-sabotage? What is it? Right? Because a lot of people are like, hey, I'm not doing that because I fear that. Is it fear, or are you taking yourself out of the game? Or are you taking, like Jorge said, taking that next step and moving forward? So understand those things, and especially if we're getting closer to our goals. And if we don't feel worthy of having those goals, we will sabotage ourselves and confuse fear, for self-sabotage and fear, or excitement, or whichever one goes in that particular case. So really understand yourself from the inside out. What is making you make those decisions?
There's a reason why horror movies make so much money. We're going to open up for questions, but before we do, I just want to go down the line here with, so the days of having a 9-to-5 job where you're working in the same company for 40 years are over. Right? Everything has changed. What we've been talking about in terms of learning, and I'll use the word learning to replace education, training, etc. Learning and courage, meaning the different changes one has to go through in life. How does that tie into, just in a few words, with your careers? And by careers, it's not just the job that you make money at, but it's also all of the other things that you do with your time, right? I'm known as much for what I've done as a volunteer as I've done making money, right? So that's I've had a bifurcated career. Efrain, when we start with you, how do we, from a career perspective, how do you tie together that learning and that courage?
Working in the tech field, it's all about adapting, right? And I've been, you see changes come about, and then now with further my career, I'm the author of changes. So there's fear, and I've seen both sides where you fear of the new change, the resistance. Why do we resist it? Because I don't know that technology. Is it going to make my job worse? Am I going to get fired? So fear, you just have to have the courage to take on those changes and, go to the classroom, train yourself. The tools are out there. And also in your career path, right? If you're comfortable, I've stayed in a position too long and I've seen what comfort can do, and every time I've been challenged, with roles and other extreme projects, and raising your hand, having the courage to raise your hand and say, hey, this is a project I really want to do. It's scary, but I've been through them, I've got them done, and I always refer back to those as, hey, you have the courage to grow, you just have to walk through that door, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about the military was that it was laid out for you, right? Here's your 6-month plan. You have these milestones, and once you accomplish that, then you'll be this, right? Whereas I think in the corporate world, it's very different, right? Where you have to take charge of your learning path, right? And just be very intentional about what you want to be or do, right? I think, starting from, inside sales to now being a field rep, I was very intentional on the things that I wanted to learn, very intentional on the people that I wanted to meet and make a relationship with. Yes, I would just say that, just being very intentional in your learning and the people that you meet.
I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. try it. I mean, you're going to get half of it right. And then you can try it again and you get more of it right. So definitely, I mean, as I've laid out my story, there's been lots of those lessons for me. But that's been the biggest takeaway, is even if we had a mission or a cause that didn't go the way that it was supposed to go, we introduced the bill I just spoke about 2 years ago, and it did not pass. It did not even leave the House. All we did was regroup, relearn, rewrite it, and try it again. And being able to adapt to everything that's changing and changing policies is crucial. And we're masters at that. We're masters at adapting to quickly changing environments. That's what we were trained to do. So, and just doing that, because once we, and now, even now with the new administration, we've even had to reteach and relearn how we present deported veterans and how we ask for grants. We can't use specific language. We can't say certain things, but we're still doing the same thing, you know? And it's just being able to adapt and learn, and let's try it this way. If it didn't go the first time, okay, well, let's reroute. Let's also, like, form a coalition. You're not going to have all the answers. Somebody's going to have some of the answers, and somebody else is going to have some of the answers. And between all of you, you're going to have all the answers. And if you don't, you're all going to try it together, and you're going to learn it together. So just don't be afraid, and don't be a gatekeeper. Don't be a gatekeeper to information. Don't let your ego get in the way. You know, I mean, maybe if you're making money, but I still say, like, you know what I mean? The way you got there, have somebody else get there. Once we get more of us on that platform and on that foundation, you know, people with the youth will be like, oh, you know what? Somebody up there that looks like me. I probably could get up there too. You know, so just, I mean, let's help each other. Don't be a gatekeeper. Share information. Knowledge is power. And try it even if you're scared.
We're going to have a lot of careers in our lifetime, and some of them may last 6 months, 6 years, whatever. I think the most important thing is giving of ourselves as well. And I remember one day I was stopped. I went to go donate to this transitional housing place. I'd been donating there for 20 years. Nobody had ever stopped me, and I was there at least 10 times a year. And this one day, the lady stopped me and she said, Rocio, why do you come here? She would only open up the gates in the past. And she's like, why do you come here? And I said, I used to live here with my son. And in that moment, they put me on a national stage. And in that moment, I made a decision. I'm like, Rocio, why are you giving things to people? Why are you not teaching things to people of yourself? So I took on my coaching, and I would go deliver workshops to single mothers and fathers. Some of them were homeless, and I remember one day I was in the audience and people were just kicking back. And they didn't even want to see me there, right? Because they were forced to do these courses. And within 25 minutes, I had those very people on the stage with me, sharing their hopes and their dreams. And so what I took away from that experience was, like, anybody can create anything. And then there's a mom yelling from the back, and I don't know who she was. She's like, it works. Well, she had gotten the job just because I taught her confidence and courage and how to stand up and come from that place of really knowing. She got the job over people who had the time, the energy, the money, the education, the job experience because of what she learned. And it also brings back to what everybody's already said. One day, years prior, I was making tamales with a girlfriend. I invited her to a birthday party. I'm like, Maria, can you help us make tamales? And she's like, we're making tamales. And I'm like, Maria, I've got to run, right? I've got to take a shower. It's like 3 o'clock. People are coming in. And she's like, Rocio, how long have you been making tamales? And I said, this is my first time. I led her without even knowing. Okay. I just got into it, and we did it. And we learned in the process. I figured if she knew how to make tortillas, I knew how to make carne, right? If we can make a salsa, we can definitely make it we can make the chile for the masa. So there's a lot of times that we're going to be learning things when we don't even know we're learning, and we don't even have to say it. We just, like, move on. Go as far as you can, and then go for it.
In the Air Force, we call it building the plane and mid-plane.
Good luck. Right?
All right, so I'm concerned that we're going to have a copyright issue with Nike because we've said just do it. So, well, let's open it up for a question or two, and then we have a special guest speaker that's going to be joining us in a couple minutes. So, any questions for our panel? Yep.
No, you go.
Are you sure?
Go.
I do want to bring up, actually get your perspective. In LA recently, a father was beaten up by ICE officers. 3 of his sons were Marines. What do you recommend when a community is living in fear? And what do you recommend to, for example, this veteran? I can only imagine what they're going through. So do you have anything to say about the courage it takes as a community to face these issues? The courage as veterans, right, to face these issues in your cities. Do you mind giving any insight on that?
Yes. Actually, we have been briefing several National Guard units because they call us undeported veterans, but they really have questions on how to keep their people or their family here. So we give them the resources. We actually work with Repatriate Our Patriots, if you guys want to write that down, immigrant defenders, and we have pro bono lawyers that can help him because they all serve in the military. His family, and they preach it, his family is supposed to be able to get help with citizenship, but they can get help through us. So I'll make sure to connect you. But one of the biggest things that we've been doing, and even at our post, is educating. What does a real warrant look like? What does a fake warrant look like? What are your rights? Giving out red cards. We go brief National Guard units on all of these things, and also the fact that the military is responsible for giving you this citizenship. But they're scared. And, they're weakening a nation because if you have scared service members that you want to deploy and they're worried whether they're going to come home and their wife is gone or their dad's beat up, that's not a good move for America. So right now, yes, we definitely, and I'll connect everybody, but immigrant defenders, we also have a website called Immigration for Veterans and Their Families. It's made by USCIS. And once you put yourself in there, we actually have a responsibility to finish your cases. We track you, we know where they are. And we work with Black Deported Veterans of America, Repatriate Our Patriots, Unified U.S. Deported Veterans of America, ACLU, Department of Defense, VA General Counsel. So we do, and LULAC, yes. So we do have a big organization to help these things, except a lot of people don't know. So please take this back, and take these organizations back. You guys can also follow us on VFW 7420, VFW Post 7420. There's a lot of information there. But there's resources out there. And we've also started a coalition with Common Defense where we will go with you to your ICE appointments as veterans with our VFW covers on. We just did it in Santa Ana for one of the veterans we brought back that they wanted to deport again.
Yeah.
We've had 2 self-deport because of the fear just recently. And I think you guys watched the news of someone who just self-deported to South Korea as well. So, and a lot of times these veterans don't know that they can still get their citizenship through us or come home.
I was just going to add on to that. I was going to say, that's a great question, but about advocacy, how important advocacy is, because, when I started learning about deported veterans, last year, a fellow Marine of mine, he's from Central Valley, he's a pastor. He went to Mexico for a couple months to go see his brother and sister for the first time. Came back to Texas. They held him in detention for about 6 days, released him on the 7th day. He's a pastor. And now his mandatory parole is about to expire, right? So I've been fired up. I called Tech Group myself, like, hey man, I need you to fix this issue. Like, this guy's he's helping veterans get off fentanyl. He's a pastor, he's a Marine. So, I think, can you talk about how important it is for from an advocacy perspective, to speak up for other veterans,
Yes.
especially those that may be having mental health issues or don't want to go to the VA like myself after 13 years and go get my disability benefits, right? I still haven't done that. I got to do it. I haven't done it yet. But it is important to advocate, because if those veterans don't advocate, to your point, they're going to be in situations where it can really impact their families. Can you talk about how important it is to be an advocate for
Yeah,
veterans?
exactly. I mean, because like I was saying, sometimes there's fear. So if we don't speak out for them and let them know the resources, but also let media, your friends, social media know that this is happening. Right now, it's a dirty little secret that you serve your country honorably and you can still get deported. Yes, they want to face, what did they do afterwards or this and that. Well, if you had given them their citizenship, they could have done whatever they wanted. Afterwards as an American citizen. So we really need everybody talking about it. How many of you in this room already knew we deported veterans before I came in here? Okay. So see, we would love to have the whole room. And now when you go advocate, put it on your social media, support an organization that is doing these things. Right now we have 2 veterans in ICE detention, 3 in ICE detention right now since January. And then the ones that die while in exile, we do, I think, more of a slap in the face than anything because they can come back in a casket with a flag draped over them and buried in a national cemetery. And next weeks across America, you're going to say their name like we never betrayed them. Advocacy is where it's at. Everyone needs to know. And we have to talk about it and we have to make it a priority. And right now, the movement just kind of pushes this to the forefront. All of these ICE raids are affecting the veterans. They're affecting the force and they're affecting the families at home.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
So for my 2 tech guys, I think this young man sitting at the end over there, what do you, you guys are sitting there going, do I have to work harder because I'm do I have to do things different because I'm what are you thinking and how do you encourage someone like that to go, hey, I was in your shoes, maybe one day you could be in mine. So maybe say you're in a spot in technology in a pretty damn good company, if I say so myself, that, you have that sort of almost responsibility. Right?
Yeah. No, I think as we say, we have to help everybody out. So, really kind of be available to do the volunteer, to do the work, to help people that are coming into the tech field, in any field, really. But you'll find that I think I found no one will come and help you and tell you. If you don't have a support system, you have to do it yourself. So coming to events like this, meeting people, networking, really just talking to us. How did you do it? Joining groups, ask questions. Ask them twice. Different people, different times. I didn't know I had education benefits because I got the wrong person. I didn't know I can do this because I made so much little money. So it's really just, yes, I guess you have to work harder, but work smarter, right? Come and ask. I think you're doing great because you're here. That's the first, not the first step, but it's a big step.
Yeah.
While we're kind of on the topic of fear, I'm doing the Marine Corps, hopefully in October, and I'm trying to go into intelligence position, right? And a lot of police that I've met in the late entry program, they're very not very outspoken. They tend to be more kind of kept to themselves. And I told my recruiter, hey, I want to take a leadership position. I want to help these kids, do better in ALVA, do better in the physical test. But we were talking about fear and all that. How do you push through that fear and take that leadership position when you yourself are scared?
What do you want to take that?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think, I don't know, the way I think about that is I think if you think about it too much, the longer you take to make a decision, the more likelihood that maybe you'll say no, right? I don't know, so you try to adopt the mentality of, if you're in a classroom and there's 10 rows, always sit in the front row, right? Sit in the front row, ask the first question. Even though you're scared, just do it, right? So, yeah.
Sorry, Nike. Can I just dovetail off of something that Rocio said earlier? Fear and excitement go together. Just like opportunities bring experiences, right? Joining the military, for me anyway, was the something foundational. You know, I had my experiences growing up in the streets of Brooklyn, right? That shaped certain aspects of my personality. But my experiences in the military also shaped who I was as a responsible adult. You know, as a 23-year-old, I was an airborne mission supervisor responsible for the $1 million airframe that I was in charge of and the 23 souls on board reporting to the White House. But the one experience that stood in my mind, you know, all these many years later, was during survival school, where during a portion of it was they had you in a mock prisoner of war camp. Right? It was a Cold War, so it was a Russian prisoner of war camp. Right? And you go through so many different things. They put me in a 6-foot pit in Spokane, Washington in November and poured cold water on me. All of that nasty stuff. But at the end of it, when the camp commander Ivan called all the people together and, Fale, now you are awful pig dogs. I can't bear to look at you. Turn around. And everybody had to turn around. Everybody had their shoulders slumped. Next thing you know, you hear Ivan say in an American accent, "About face," and everybody turned around, and there was the American flag where the Russian flag had been. And you start hearing the American national anthem, and everybody grew about 3 inches in that moment. And that sense of pride, that sense of emotion that I still bring with me to this day, 40 years later. Right? Those opportunities to have those experiences that are life-altering and foundational are something that also, along with fear, can bring excitement.
I think that's why I asked the question, right? And like Efrain, you were saying, like, you know, where you came from, and then you get on this plane and you land, and it's like, it's like at some point it's like an almost a fear, but an adrenaline, and you know, I mean, I grew up in Pueblo, Colorado. Okay, I got on that plane and I landed here, and I saw these palm trees, and then I saw these little, what I thought Chinese guys, but they were Filipino guys yelling at me, and I was like, where am I? I mean, did they send me to like Asia somewhere? I didn't know. And just I just want to like reiterate this, because I think it's an important thing right now for, you know, when I was like, I remember standing in the line, my first inspection. Anybody that knows me knows my hair grows fast, and I always look, and the commander took off my cover, and he says, "How did they let a cholo like you in my Navy?" And I had every intention to go east side Pueblo on him, but then I thought too, like, what would that do to my life, right? And luckily, I remember, you know, and this goes back to things that you grew up with. My grandma used to always say, "Someone will do it, why not you?" Right? Someone will do it, why not you? And those words stayed with me, and now I think back and I actually thank that commander for putting that fear in me. And some days I want to go back and say, "Hey, bro, you know, check out where I live now." and you know, but it's those things that you trigger back to where you came from and inspire where you're going, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close this panel out with the same 6 words that I say to young people when I speak to them. Aim high, work hard, stay humble. And those are the ways to get ahead. Thank you all. A round of applause for our panel.